Quite the opposite. I think there's no way that this fight is going to go beyond the Ukrainian borders, possibly into Moldova, but that's not a NATO ally. The countries, that have been mentioned, Poland, Romania, Slovakia, which share borders, are all members of NATO, and if Russian troops were to cross those, you'd trigger Article 5 and you'd be into Third World War, and the Russians won't do that. It's pointless. It's nonsensical. And at the moment, it's building up rapidly. The tension is extremely high. Reports of rocket attacks on Kyiv, specifically targeting the power station, and across the country where they're targeting infrastructure and also things like power and military installations. So we have to see how it develops from here. Over whether they'll actually attack Kyiv and try and take it. They can control the city in the sense that they can close down the access to it. They can take over TV station, post office, telephone exchanges, the public transport. But to actually occupy the city is an enormous task. Urban fighting is the most expensive in terms of men and resources. You have to come with a massive force, and Kyiv is a city of 2.4 million people. Klitschko, the mayor, has been handing out guns. 10,000 firearms have been handed out to locals, plus what they have already. And if the Russian troops were to go into Kyiv and try and take the city over, there would be a huge and extremely bloody fight. You have to remember, Kyiv is known in Russian as one of the three hero cities which resisted the Nazis. It put up an enormous fight and got this gold star, which stands on a statue outside as you come into the city, along with Leningrad, now Petersburg, and along with Moscow. And it's not going to fall easily, and the Russians are fully aware of that. They know this history far better than we do. So I think that's going to be very difficult. At the moment, the fighting, such as it is, seems to be largely rocket attacks. The main bulk of the troops are around the borders. Kyiv is coming under attack, which is the biggest city in the west, just on the Russian border, second largest in the country. But we haven't seen the sort of large-scale infantry and with mechanized armor happen yet. And again, outside Kyiv, there's been APCs spotted today by the bridge that you're showing that got blown up. And there was a big firefight as well there, but that's not the same as having 50 tanks followed by several hundred soldiers as they march into the city. These are sort of more threatening actions, skirmishes. So we still got a long way to go before we get to the large infantry action, where we get to the large numbers of casualties. It's still probing at this point and using the rockets to take out strategic targets. The significance is the coordination of the sanctions, that the international community are standing shoulder to shoulder. And clearly there's been a lot of talking between them, and the sanctions that were rolled out in the course of yesterday, first by the Brits, then Biden came out, and then the EU, and the EU finished that process. It takes them a bit longer to do anything. But they're all the same. I mean, they're going after the banks, they're going after some oligarchs, they're going after the strategic industries, and now the people, the criminal elite have been named. In terms of the effectiveness, Vladimir Putin doesn't have any assets in the West. I mean, he doesn't have houses in the south of France, and indeed, he doesn't have any identifiable money at all, although the group of oligarchs that are closest to him are all multi-billionaires, so he clearly has access to all the money that he could possibly want. But it's never been shown, and other dictators in Eastern Europe, former Soviet Union, they've been caught with bank accounts in Deutsche Bank and in various other banks, Panama paper exposures, what have you. None of that's ever been with Putin. I mean, in that sense, he's squeaky clean. And in general, he's not considered to be motivated by money. Lots of the other leaders of these countries are clearly filthy rich, and their families are filthy rich. And Putin's motivation, it's about power. I mean, he's a KGB guy. When he was working in St. Petersburg for Sobchak, this liberal mayor in the 90s, he wasn't known as a corrupt official in so much as he lived in a modest house, drove a modest car. Although he had, as deputy mayor, he had access to a lot of money. And as I say, it's all about power. He's a KGB guy, and he's motivated by trying to make Russia great again, which is also what's motivating him to go into this, what is in Russia, a very unpopular war against Ukraine in order to exert Russia's geopolitical strength.
Geocase and joins us now from the capital of Georgia. Victor, thanks for coming on the programme. Look, I'll put the same question to you that I put to Ben there. We heard NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg earlier saying that Russia's objectives in all of this are not limited to Ukraine. Ben thought that probably was not the case, but as a country that is not too far away from this part of the world, what would your reaction be to that?
I completely agree and share that assessment, because the Russian policy is not just about reclaiming lands alongside its borders. It's about much more which Russia puts at stake. And as I'm always saying, the war in Ukraine is not about Ukraine versus Russia. The picture is much bigger. The picture is about either rewriting the norms of international law or keeping the rules of international law as they are. And what we see from Russia is a flagrant and blatant attempt to rewrite those laws, to fit those laws to its own needs and own aspirations. And those aspirations, those needs, have nothing in common with international order and international comity. So therefore, of course, I completely agree. If Ukraine falls, that would and will have a spillover effects. And Georgia should be, well, quite next in the row. Who knows? As we all are very well familiar with the legal structure of NATO and NATO founding treaty, there is not much we could expect, unfortunately, from NATO if a crisis takes place in Georgia. So this is an issue which has to be reconsidered. We Georgians been doing quite enough from our side to move closer to NATO. But as I always repeat and saying this over and over, this is a two-way street. So very much depends on NATO, its dedication, commitments, and finally taking up decisions which are in line with necessities of these hard times. Ukrainian people are defending not just their own country, but they're defending the free world in the Europe. And therefore, their fight has much bigger and much broader and much deeper meaning. They're defending Georgia same time, and they're defending all free-minded nations. As for Georgia, Georgia has expressed on many occasions its political support, and we're ready to do all which falls under the humanitarian remit. Unfortunately, there is not much which we can do economy-wise, and as for the military equipment or military assistance, of course, primarily it's to the West and to NATO, for NATO to take care of.